Hello, and welcome once again, or for the first time, perhaps. I don't know. I haven't been monitoring your activities, but welcome to Really with Tom and Dave. And once again, I've lost the coin flip, so I am Dave again. And
As it should
Tom
be.
is the other guy, Tom
Hello,
Wheeler.
all. Hello,
Uh,
Dave.
Hello, Tom. Good to see you.
Good to see you,
Uh,
my friend.
Nice. And we should also just say we let everyone know that we've now started a Patreon account. Uh,
Yes,
because
we have to tell them about this,
someone just explained to us that those exist, and they set it
and
up for us.
and it's good that they did because if you want exclusive content,
Mhm.
early ad-free episodes, discount codes for upcoming merch, which I want.
Yep.
I'm excited to see that. Join our Patreon family today. You can sign up for that, and also don't forget to follow us on Instagram at
Yes.
really underscore podcast underscore official, TikTok at really podcast.
Mhm.
If you want to see Dave's beautiful face and my, tired looking face, subscribe on YouTube on the Stampede podcast channel, or just hear our dulcet tones anywhere you get your podcast fix.
Yes.
Does that
And
sound about
I think
right?
that covers it. Those are the things. Yeah, and also don't forget to, yes, subscribe, hit the like buttons on whatever version you're watching. There's some method of letting us know that you like us.
Yeah. Jump up and
Uh,
shout out your window.
yeah, because
Whatever you need to do.
I'm very insecure. I will assume you actively dislike us if you don't actually say that you do like us. It's just
Yeah,
the
and
I
we don't
function.
want we don't want Dave whining
Yeah.
about that. So let's make him feel good about this, people. Get
Yeah.
out there, like buttons, all that stuff. I'm riled up today,
Oh,
my friend.
I know, because, we should have been expecting it. David Grush warned us, but the program of character assassination has begun.
The hit job is on.
And the first out of the gate are the wonderful people over at the Intercept. What's the name of that? What's his name? Klippenstein.
Yeah, Chris Klippenstein. He's going to be
Chris
famous soon. I
Klippenstein.
mean, he's getting a lot of love on the UFO X's and former Twitters and all that shit. If you have children at home, they're going to learn some new words today because I
Mhm.
just think this is some bullshit that's going on. And
Yes.
I'm hot. I'm hot today, which my hot is like a simmer,
Mhm.
like a low simmer. But this is, I guess, predictable. It
Yep.
definitely feels like the playbook out of the 1950s or something because they're going after Mr. Grush for what appears to be. I mean, if we can recap for people who are not paying super close attention, do you
Yes.
want to just run?
Sure.
Want
Well,
to
it's
run through
well, well,
what the article said?
it's an article. It's an article in the Intercept, and basically, um, the journalist,
What is the Intercept? Is that like
Ken
a
Klippenstein.
is that on? It's an
It's an
online
online news
government.
magazine. They do a lot of they cover a lot of military and science,
Okay.
and they rose to prominence, I think, in with the Snowden release. They were kind of
Hmm.
part of one of the uh, outlets that the information from Snowden was, I guess, sent to,
Okay.
and that wrote a lot of stuff about Snowden. Um, and they're a good they really are a good online magazine. Um, but this article is basically it's pretty much pure character assassination. Um, that what he has done is, I guess he was, and he admits to this, that he was tipped by people at DoD and in the intel community to go look in this area, to look around to see if you can find any interactions between David Grush and law enforcement. And this was a way of directing. And I know yesterday on Twitter, because I'd heard from Ross Coulthart on the Chris Cuomo show. He had said that this seemed to have come from the intel community, and it was a violation of HIPAA, which is the rules protecting people's medical privacy. But it turns out it was a legal FOIA request done with the sheriff's office, um, of a time that David Grush was suffering from PTSD and was abusing alcohol and was went spent some time in a hospital, like only like a day, getting treated for his PTSD, and then has ongoing treatment for his PTSD. So he got hold of this information and has written a lengthy article. Uh, Basically, I can't. The only thing I can think of is basically just to try and discredit his testimony to Congress. Um,
And just to give some little bit more background, David Grush is a decorated war veteran from Afghanistan. He was quite clear in his first interview with Ross Coulthard that he had suffered depression after returning back from Afghanistan, as so many veterans and have. And he also, there was a friend of his that committed suicide. He admitted that he had really struggled with depression, um, and so this article, which was very, very clear in its bias. Even the headline, I think, was like, Grush maintained security clearance despite XYZ. It was
yeah,
sort of like,
yeah,
it was
yeah.
already criticizing that
The
the whole point
clearance
of this is
after
that,
psychiatric detention. Psychiatric
yeah,
detention. Yes.
as though
Yes.
he was just raving, running down the street. And here's like, I find this so I find it so fucked up on so many levels. Partly, like, the most innocent version of this is just sort of poor journalism, just somebody wanting to jump in, not trying at all to present both sides, just trying to go after the guy's credibility. Gee, I wonder why. Not talking about who vouched for him, the senators, the congressmen, the hearings, the laws that are being passed, from Chuck Schumer to none of that. It doesn't address any of that. It just is sort of pulling out this old playbook from, I mean, fucking Roswell. I mean, it's old. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, he's a drunk. He's a
Yeah.
drunk, and and this idea that he's insane and can't be trusted because he has PTSD. And speaking as the son of a veteran who I think struggled more quietly with PTSD, but was a World War II veteran and a Korean War veteran, and struggled with addiction. I just think the idea that you can somehow lampoon and denigrate someone's credibility, that they're dishonest if they struggle with these kinds of issues, or that, because check me if I'm wrong, in the kind of psychological profile or psychiatric database, it doesn't say that one of the symptoms of PTSD is that you go to Congress and under oath perjure yourself. It's so unrelated. It's
Hmm.
so cheap. And it's just like and it is for anyone suffering from this kind of stuff, heroes coming home. I mean, I find it really just cheap and
Yeah.
pathetic journalism
Well,
to
and
use that brush to kind of paint this guy's testimony. Like, nothing about his testimony, nothing about, like, oh, his superiors say he's a fucking liar, that he makes shit up. Like, no, that okay, then maybe I'll
yeah.
start paying attention. But this
No,
idea
no.
that he had some horrible night, that scared his wife because he was, having an episode, like, is it's creepy and fucked up that they go after him that way.
And it says to people not just in the military, but it says to basically anyone in the public, anyone in the world, um, if you're suffering from any form of mental illness, any form of depression or substance abuse, you better keep it secret, because
Yeah, right.
somewhere down the road, somewhere, like someone like Ken Klippenstein will come along and use it against you.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
you're
yeah,
unreliable, you're probably a liar, you are insane, you can't be trusted, you shouldn't have security clearance if you struggle with this kind of, it's just
yeah, and on the I was watched the Breaking Points interview today with Crystal and Sager. They and on that he just kept saying he seemed to be really irritated, Klebenstein, by the fact that people kept calling him a decorated war veteran. That seemed to really upset him for some reason. And just the fact that he
Yeah.
kept hearing this over and over again, decorated war veteran, set him off, and he decided, well, let's just see, what else is there we should know about him. And again, uh, as though having a diagnosis of PTSD somehow cancels out decorated war veteran. Um,
Yeah, he was really going after just calling him a drunk,
yeah,
he was doing that to try to offset the fury he'd incited by referencing or like the depression or the fact that this guy had been
yeah,
open and honest about his struggles coming home from fucking Afghanistan.
yeah. And
And
and and for the record, yes, he has a diagnosis of PTSD and depression.
yeah.
Um, and so when the journalist starts leaning into the fact, "Oh, I was really more concerned about the alcoholism," and it's going, "Well, how do you know he's an alcoholic?" Well, his ex-wife said he was.
Mhm.
And I'm going, "Well, does she is she a medical professional?"
Mhm.
Because that's just hearsay unless he has a diagnosis of alcoholism, and there's nothing in the FOIA the FOIA information that he got that says he's an alcoholic. So maybe he is, which also, by the way, is also a disease and one that he may have, if he did have, may have been treating it and been dealing with it. And again, still doesn't
Has
call into question any of his testimony.
abso-fucking-lutely nothing to do with his testimony,
Yeah.
and it the article is bereft of any evidence that
Mhm.
and now,
And
in
the
fairness in fairness, Grush may end up being a complete misdirect. Who knows? We have not seen the garages filled with UFOs yet. I
yeah.
completely admit, like, I admit that. I don't know if this guy is secretly, you know, harboring demons that God knows what, and I guess that's what this is trying to imply. It's just trying to imply he is not to be trusted, and it's
Mhm.
also, even though it's ineffective in its efforts, it's just sort of it's written in a way which is just its agenda and motives are so obvious.
Well,
It
nothing
does say to anybody else thinking about coming forward, it does say to them like, you
think it
better
through.
not have one fucking thing out there, you don't better not have one little anything, tiny blip,
Yeah.
because we'll find it and we'll expose you. And I think this is a warning shot to other potential whistleblowers of what they're going to try to put this guy
Oh,
through.
oh, it definitely is. And the other thing is, and the article, I mean, and the author of the article states very clearly that he has some antipathy to the whole UFO story. He just doesn't believe it coming from anybody. So he does have I guess a vested interest in shooting down any witness that says something real is happening because he doesn't believe it. So therefore, because he doesn't believe it, um, these people should be attacked and destroyed for coming out with evidence. And and the other thing about the article, nothing about the article is really about his clearances, even though that's the headline. The article isn't about his clearances. The bulk of it is about debunking his testimony. It's like, bringing in people like Susan Go and people calling the congressional hearing embarrassing. And, people saying that, basically just saying flat out UFOs don't exist. So this is all crazy. So you should ignore any of these people and what they're saying. So the article itself, the bulk of the article is not about his security clearance. And the other thing is he also, even in his article, he says, security clearances of the sort Grush has held are subject to strict requirements, including regarding psychological episodes and substance issues. Grush has used his high level clearance to shore up his credibility and telling the committee, I was clear to literally all relevant compartments and in a position of extreme trust in both my military and civilian capacities. So even in his article, he admits, yes, that's the nature of the clearances. And even though he had these incidents and suffered from PTSD, the government still saw fit to maintain his clearances. Even though all of this is on his record, none of it was hidden. He didn't deny any of it, but they maintained his clearances. And the author seems to imply that because other people didn't get clearances, that makes his clearance suspect somehow.
Mhm.
That, well, why does he have this clearance even though he had these incidents when other people didn't get clearances? And which is a pretty thin and really stupid argument that we should be suspicious of the fact that he maintained his clearance because other people didn't get the same clearances he had. Not that he earned those clearances through service.
Oh yeah, it's just inherently critical of his superiors for keeping this crazy man in his job, and that obviously they were protecting him, and he's secretly a lunatic, which is what they've said about certain whistleblowers and people that have come forward for almost 70 years as part of this ongoing story.
Mm-hmm.
While at the same time, the government and the CIA and all the intelligence community double deals and tells the public one thing and does something else behind the scenes that shows they actually take it very seriously, this issue. So this is kind of an old playbook. Um, and I think it was interesting. There was this back and forth kind of dialogue because this guy, you're right, he's very out there, and he's very trolling of like UFO Twitter, like trying to kind of rile them up. I mean, he seemed to be enjoying the back and forth, and not winning himself many friends, and not really presenting himself as even a kind of even-handed journalist, sort of like,
Yeah.
he was just like, fuck you guys, nerds. I mean, I think he said something about like a bunch of triggering UFO nerds or whatever. Well,
Mm-hmm.
mission accomplished. So he also was denying that he was given the story, as you had said at the top, like he was saying like, no, this was part of a Freedom of Information Act request. I kind of knew the area where the cops were, and that story started to kind of break down under scrutiny. And then he pretty much just sort of kind of admitted his own guilt. He um, confessed to the fact that he was, in fact, um, tipped off by the intelligence community. And I think we have this clip of he was in an X space, Twitter space. I don't know what we call
Yeah.
these things these days, but um,
The platform,
let's just
formerly known as Prince.
yeah, exactly. So this is what he said when confronted with the sort of inconsistencies.
I just said during the hearing, I had a tweet that said, if you have good or bad stuff about him, like whatever, I didn't want to bias it. Like, and that's why I put out requests for tips, because if you only rely on people that then there's probably a selection bias of like where the types of people that you're going to be friends with. So I just put out a call for tips, and actually got a lot of people that reached out with kind of tidbits, little piece of information, thought, and it was mostly negative, to be honest with you. And to be totally straight, if there was positive stuff, I would have put that in there too. There just
Sure.
wasn't really.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think
mostly
because
negative.
of the way the story turned out, everyone's like, "Oh, he's really looking for a hit piece." Again, being completely straight with you, I don't believe the UFO stuff. I don't have any insight into whether he believes it or not. Like, I assume he believes what he's saying. I'm not someone that thinks everyone is, grifter. And there's this word "grifter" has become so loosely used. I don't use that.
Yeah,
you know what
yeah.
I mean? Like, people tend.
Well,
So
He's
I
using
don't
it
have
now,
any
but
comment about his
Mhm.
was that
intentions.
Yeah, no
But
one
yeah,
else brought
that
up
tweet then the
Grifter.
root of what sparked you to go to that specific sheriff station?
No. I knew people in the area, and so it was like I was getting bits and pieces from different people about stuff that they were saying. And so they were kind of like, look into his. They gave me, how people, the intel people, they're vague. They'll be like, look into his background, and they were kind of
Yeah.
hinting that it's like, trying to think about how to say this in a way that's
Well,
like rigorous.
Doesn't make you look like an asshole. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he said intel
Multiple
people.
people told me
Multiple people.
to just look at any run-ins with law enforcement that he had in the past, and it was vague. I think there's this impression that it's like, oh my god, someone planted this and they gave him the direct. It doesn't. If it works, I mean, I understand why people think that, because a lot of media is planted stories. I don't blame people for thinking that. A lot of when you open the New York Times, most of those stories the White House put in there, or a committee.
That it wasn't planted, that it was vague. People in Intel and DOD telling him, look for his run-ins with the law.
I'm
Like,
just a patsy.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
no, so that's just fake. I really found the story. It wasn't like they
Yeah.
handed me the story. It wasn't a planted story. They just told me look for his run-ins with the law. Okay,
Yes.
so unless he's a career criminal, you're probably going to come up with very specific answers to those questions, and these
Yeah.
specific answers they intended you to get. So yeah, yeah, you were handed the story. It was given to you. It was a plant. Claiming that no, I did really great research. I managed to find out that this decorated war hero had a couple of incidents with the police, not criminal incidents, not incidents where he caused any trouble in public or harmed anyone. No, incidents where it was thought he might be a threat to his own safety
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
of his depression and PTSD. So those are the incidents that he found, because those are his only run-ins with the law are these incidents. And the people who gave him that direction to go look for it knew exactly what he would find. So him claiming that, oh, I just did great journalism is just such bullshit.
Well, it's just there was an initial like, oh, I knew the area, and then there were these spies that told me what to look into with his,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, well, which is it, my friend? And
Yeah.
his agenda was, and I'm sure he succeeded to a degree, was to just humiliate this guy,
Mhm.
try to make him feel shame for these incredibly dark moments in his life, dredge them out and wave them around to try to impugn his credibility
Yeah.
and make him look like a lunatic because he has gone out on an incredible limb, as we all know, and said what he believes is the truth about and what um, all current evidence and government activity suggests is true, and that there is fire where all of this smoke is pouring out,
Yeah.
to the fact that we have craft and that we might potentially have bodies and that there is something going on out there that we need to pay attention to. And instead, it's just this like
Yeah.
silly CIA bullshit, just leading this guy to, to
And it's
exactly what they wanted,
yes.
do
And if
exactly what they
only
want.
the intercept had been faster, they could have prevented Grush from tricking uh, people like Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand into writing laws
Mm-hmm.
based on his whistleblower complaint. That was, by the way, corroborated by other witnesses to the inspector general, the in it was the intelligence community's inspector general. Didn't just hear from Grush; he heard from corroborating witnesses with firsthand accounts under oath. Multiple corroborating witnesses
And
came
according to
forward.
senators, according to Rubio, many people have come forward with Grush's story with high clearances, high level security
Mhm.
clearances, very credible people still in the government, by his own words, people that are afraid to come forward for their careers, for their reputations, and for their fears for their own physical safety. And so here we see what could be the first step of a kind of organized effort, which I assume is also has to be illegal to intimidate, whistleblowers. I mean, isn't this what the fucking law is there to protect people from?
Yeah,
Insiders in the government coming
the
out and
the
sort of trying to hatchet job them?
whoever in the DoD and the intel community, whoever DoD and intel people that he was talking to were committing a crime. They were violating the Whistleblower Protection Act.
Yeah, I mean, they're
Yeah,
trying to trash this guy.
yeah, and of course, I love this that he quotes he only quotes two people. The only real quote he has is from an
The
the
spokesperson, the press
spokesperson.
secretary
Well,
for the
yeah,
Department of Defense.
or someone
So reliable.
has had their name withheld for fear of professional reprisals.
Oh
Right?
dear.
Yeah, I think so that person,
Gee.
that's ironic, isn't it?
Yeah, they're
What
afraid.
what kind of professional reprisals are you fearing? Perhaps a
Mhm.
journalist writing a smear piece against you, or perhaps
That's some
some
cheesy
detail of
shit,
your life
man.
being exploited against you. So it's very ironic that this journalist protects the identity of this person who has this fear of the reprisals that Klippenstein is effectuating.
And as I said, I think the sort of least harmful version of this is shoddy journalism and people just taking some pot shots or somebody trying to get on the other side of a story where it seems like up to this point, Grush has been fairly bulletproof. He's been forthright. He's been honest. He's given the testimony he's given. He's been under oath. He's had people vouch for him who are still in government with high level clearances who believe fundamentally. Gary Nolan, the Stanford PhD in academic, has said publicly and also privately that vouching for this guy's reputation. So I think there is potentially just that, like, all right, I want to be the guy on the other side and get some attention for myself, which this guy has. There is a much more sinister version of this where, I don't know, you put stories out there. There's the mid-range version where you are trying to scare off other whistleblowers. This is a coordinated effort, kind of a psyop to shame Grush, change the conversation, destroy his reputation and credibility, and scare off other whistleblowers. And then there's a super even darker phase, which is, well, you tell everybody a guy is suicidal and has made threats of suicide. And, if anything happened to him, that would be terrible. But of course, there would be a record of these events in his life, and that could sort of explain things. And I find all of them creepy and disturbing, but
there is a history of mysterious suicides in the UFO lore, and the history of UFO of people coming forward and talking about UFOs. There have been mysterious suicides in the past.
I hope Congress gives this guy some security, some real security, because I think he should be. I think it's reason for concern. I mean, if the CIA or whoever in intelligence, because this guy, admitted it, are doing that work, why? What would possibly be the motive? Because it doesn't correlate at all to his testimony. There is zero evidence of that his testimony is false or provably false, or that he has any record of dishonesty or any record of making shit up. So why would they come forward to just say, oh yeah, check this out? I mean, that's creepy as shit.
Because so he got some people. So apparently he got mostly negative responses on Twitter, which is a rarity. Negative statements on Twitter. But I guess that cancels out like the really high-ranking officials who were quoted in the debrief article, praising him and calling him a first-rate soldier, first-rate person, and saying that his statements are true. So all of that gets canceled because this guy did a Twitter request. And again, even in that comment, he says, mostly I got negative, and then he goes on to say, I mean, if I got any positives, I would have printed those too. Well, you just said mostly negative. So you've just stated that there were some positive comments that you did not choose to post. So it's like even within a sentence, he can't get through a sentence without contradicting himself.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's not, Edward R. Murrow. We're not dealing with, Cy Hirsch or some, serious, this guy is just sort of a guy like shoveling the shit to, out into the public that the intelligence community wants people to hear. And that is what's, that's what's disturbing about it. I mean, he admitted that it was the intelligence community, and it could have been anyone, right? It could have been someone who heard something or worked with it. It was spies that came up with this stuff. And that's what I find so disturbing about it. Like what is that? Why is that agenda? What is that agenda?
Yeah. I think the journalist himself, I think he honestly is just somebody who doesn't want to believe this is happening and that it's real. So he's predisposed to be, I guess the term we learned during the 2016 election, a useful idiot. So he's a useful idiot for the people within Intel and DoD who want to discredit um, Grush because it fits in with his belief that UFOs can't be real, even though really at this point the bulk of the evidence, the weight of all the evidence is UFOs are real.
Yeah, I mean,
And
we're past this. The government was past it in 50, 60 years ago. They had already basically admitted and accepted it, but they didn't want the public to know. They didn't want the public to know.
Mhm.
And there is just evidence after evidence of the fact that this is true. And this guy just has to learn, like, you don't write stories where you're just shaming mental health issues. It's like get
well, the
get a
harm the
get a
harm it
real
does to the
story.
general public, the harm it does to the general public to make people ashamed of their mental
Just
health issues.
so insulting to veterans, like the
Yeah.
fucking these. I mean, so many. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, except that they're extremely high of people that come home with post traumatic stress. And why shouldn't they? They're doing the hardest job in the world, protecting this idiot's freedom,
Mhm.
and it's just a cheap shot, and it has nothing to do with the credibility of his testimony. Like, it has nothing to do with the story that he told, and he may end up being someone who is not a reliable storyteller. We won't know until the garage doors are open, the warehouses are found,
Mhm.
and we will be able to confirm such matters. And I agree, that is still we all still want to see that. Um,
Mhm.
but it feels like this is a real old playbook, and makes me think of something we've talked about a lot. We've talked about it with Leslie. Um, we talked about it with Jeremy. We talked about it with Paul Hynek. We talked about this thing called the Robertson panel.
Mhm. Yes.
Um, and this was put together in 1953. It was a committee of scientists who were part of a group that was organized post sightings in Washington, D.C., where there was hysteria for several days because radar and eyewitness reports were showing active UAP, UFO activity happening all around the government of Washington, D.C., all around the White House, all around the Congress. They sent jets out. These jets, circled, they chased, pilots saw
Yep.
them with their own eyes.
They were
There was
surrounded by them.
surrounded by them. There was a historic press conference about these sightings. So this is where generals and Air Force generals were brought out to say, like, oh, we're dealing with it. We don't know what it is. This is obviously the height of the Red Scare. So there's a lot of moving parts to what was an actual event. There was an actual sort of UFO swarm around
The Capitol and the White
the
House.
Capitol and the White House. Jets were sent to deal with them, and very similarly to like the Tic Tac, they were outmaneuvered. They could not compete with these objects. And after that, um, there was a lot of internal CIA activity, and one of the things that there are sort of reports of, and was basically, how do we calm this issue down? How do we how do we get this to go away?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
do
they
you wanna
couldn't.
speak to that a little bit?
Well, it was just the notion that, well, we can't do anything about the UFOs. So what we have to do is do something about the UFO reporting. Um, because there was nothing, they were basically accepting the fact that these UFOs keep showing up. There's nothing they could do about it. Um, but so they saw the problem as being the public overwhelming the civilian reporting mechanisms that they that were rightly, you could say, were necessary for uh, being ready to respond to any kind of a Soviet attack during the.
Mhm.
Um, so their goal was, well, let's get people to stop talking about UFOs. Let's create an environment um, through they basically wrote it up in their memos through debunking,
Hmm.
uh, through scientific explanations, explaining away as many of these sightings as possible, um, and through basically through character assassination, uh,
So
and
there,
discrediting
there's
individuals.
there's this formalized memorandum to the Director of Central Intelligence, this guy General Walter Bedell Smith, on September 11th, 1952. It states as part of this memorandum, um, on the basis of these programs of research, CIA develop and recommend for adoption by the National Security Council a policy of public information which will minimize the risk of panic, which was, of course, a nice way of saying debunk, um, make fun of, diminish, just make them stop talking about it, and do what we can to keep the public from talking about this while we study the shit out of it.
Yeah, and they also decided they needed to shape the story in news media, and also basically feed stories and ideas to the entertainment industry. And so there's a long history of for some reason, um, sort of shadowy government officials reaching out to producers of television and movies, going from that period forward, and sort of helping to shape the narrative about UFOs and extraterrestrials. Um,
And I
and
think
and it
this is
worked. And it worked
yeah,
as a
yeah.
meaning, because there wasn't really a huge stigma about talking about UFOs until after the Robertson panel. I mean, there were like Look magazine did a huge article basically with the headline "UFOs are real." I think Time magazine did a big piece on UFOs. A lot of big stories were being done about UFOs at the time.
There was a lot of discussion in these memorandum about how Russia might view all this, and I think that there was obviously this concern that the U.S. government doesn't want to in any way appear powerless, afraid, people panicking about anything. I think this was all about posture and making sure you got to, appear muscular and unthreatened by, if something's running around in your skies and you don't have any answers for it and your military is running around, that was something that would be taken advantage of in the in the game, the political game back and forth during the Cold War. So this was probably one motivation for trying to tamp it down. But
Mhm.
it is important to note that this is still happening today. This is still ongoing. This thread back from 1952 to 2023 is still the same shit we see in this like Intercept article.
Yeah,
It
and these
has it is the
statements.
child of the father of this CIA memorandum and this panel, which also was part of J. Allen Hynek's
Yeah,
portfolio as the head
and
of Project Blue Book.
and
And
Hynek was on the Robertson committee as well, and I think in
the Robertson panel. Yeah.
yeah, the Robertson panel, and I know there's a great documentary. There's an old like 1970s documentary about UFOs with Stewart hosting it. Not Rod Stewart, Rod
Rod
Serling.
Stewart, I want to see that one.
Yeah, Rod Serling. Rod Stewart's one is much sexier.
Yeah.
But the Rod Serling one, which you got to, I don't know if you've seen it, but you got to see. Everyone should see it. I forget what it's called now, but you can
I'll look
find
it
it
up.
on YouTube. Um,
Look it up on YouTube. What do we have to do
yeah,
everything for you
I
people out
know.
there?
J. Allen Hynek
Jesus.
basically
Dave's
talks about.
working hard here.
Yeah, he talks about that being on that panel, and basically, that there was just no serious consideration of, what do
Yeah.
we do about UFOs? It was all just, how do we stop people from thinking about it?
And I
And
think his son Paul told us about as was talking about that they were essentially just sent in to just steamroll this fucker, just roll over it, flatten it, make it
Mhm.
go away.
Yeah,
And as Project Blue Book was meant to
yeah,
just calm everybody. Everybody's just calm because nobody can be trusted with this information. Just daddy and government.
yeah,
And then subsequently, J. Allen Hynek goes to do his own investigations, leaves government, and becomes really an activist for
yeah,
experiencers and people that have, seen things and just really wanted to get to the bottom of it because he was convinced something was definitely, positively completely going on, and
Yes,
the government
based
was not addressing it.
yes, based on evidence he was able to examine firsthand and witnesses he was able to talk to. And so he was he had access to information that no one else had at the time, being in Blue Book and
Mhm,
being at his job to debunk everything, and knowing that his own debunkings weren't true. um as
mhm.
time went on, and realizing he had to start speaking up and undo the damage he had done. um
There's this interesting thing that I was reading, and I'm looking at here at alongside while they're putting together the Robertson panel, while they're organizing this thing to essentially tell everyone that this stuff is nuts. The CIA, in an August 15th memo, was talking about sightings of UFOs reported at Los Alamos and Oak Ridge at a time when the background radiation could count had risen inexplicably. Here we run out of even blue yonder explanations that might be tenable, and we still are left with numbers of incredible reports from credible observers. And it went on to note, this was a CIA Assistant Director Chadwell, recent reports reaching the CIA indicated that further action was needed, um, essentially to investigate what the hell was going on. So that this with from one end they're saying nothing's going on, stop, it's not real, go away. On the end they're saying, holy shit, all these people are seeing stuff around our most important military bases, and we have we've exhausted the possible reasons for it. So we really have to figure out what this is. That's like,
Yeah. Oh, the more
so
they were
that's
dismissing it publicly, the more deeply they were
yeah,
investigating it
it's just
secretly.
so right. But Grush is crazy. Grush is the crazy one
Yeah.
because
Well,
he
here's
had some depression issues, but none of
yeah.
this happened.
Well, even in this article, it's just sloppy writing that he doesn't even get his fact. Like in the article, he says that even Grush said he hadn't seen recovered alien vehicles or bodies. But then he goes, well, two former fighter pilots alleged unidentified aerial phenomena. Neither of them said anything about their provenance. Grush was alone among the witnesses in attributing them to extraterrestrials, which is wrong on two levels.
All
Yeah,
levels. Yeah.
yeah. Well, the first one is David Fravor very, very clearly stated that he didn't believe that the United States or any other country that we know of had the material science to build the craft that he chased in 2004 off of Catalina, the Tic Tac incident. David Grush, in his sworn testimony, said that in his opinion, no one, no nation had the material science capabilities to build these things. And he said in the public record before that he believes these things are not from this world. So he went on the record about the provenance of these craft. He didn't say he knew where they were from. That's correct. He didn't call them extraterrestrial, and nor did David Grush. David
And
Grush
why would
very
they?
yeah, and
How?
David Grush has been very specific and pointed about never using the term extraterrestrial.
Right.
He does not use the term extraterrestrial. He uses the term non-human intelligence.
Yeah, and
Uh,
organics was thrown out there too,
yeah,
which
yeah.
which is a little
So,
disturbing.
because David Grush has repeatedly said he doesn't know where they're from,
Hmm.
and he doesn't have a theory about where they're from. He just knows what they can do, and that we have them. You
And I
know,
think that's a very purposeful thing from so many of these investigators and journalists. Leslie Kane doesn't go out of her way to assume or surmise what they are. Anyone who does is putting a target on their back. Of course, people are just trying to say there is something there we need to look at.
yeah,
There is something in the skies. These pilots are the best observers we have. Please look at what's going on, and someone investigate it, and someone look into it. Clearly, the highest levels of government believe this is worth looking into because they're
yes,
passing laws and spending money to do so.
hmm
And
and
I
and
think
and
importantly so.
and passing laws that will put people in prison if they violate them. The laws both that came out of Gillibrand's intelligence committee, and and Chuck Schumer's
Schumer's thing
draft.
has just got language that's just fucking amazing. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
eminent domain over not, over craft that is it.
craft and beings and
Yeah.
information, and I think it's something like 24 times Schumer's draft legislation uses the term non-human intelligence.
Mm, yeah. This is not your
Um,
average agriculture bill passing through.
no, and
Yeah,
they are writing these based on the fact that they are seeing more information than we in the public are. They have access to information that makes them take this very seriously. And so again, this ridiculous notion that that people like this journalist in The Intercept are putting forward that these people have somehow been misled and that Congress has been made a fool of by having this hearing. The very fact that the information that we don't have, as I said, I think I talked before, it said, basically what we're seeing is like a negative impression of the information they have. We're seeing
right.
the footprint, they've seen the foot.
Mm-hmm.
So their actions are based on seeing the foot. And we can interpret what they've seen basically by looking at the footprint that they leave with their legislation and their actions. And even the fact that you had AOC and Tim Burchett treating each other with civility on the same panel, Jamie Raskin and Matt Gaetz, behaving, with civility and decorum and professionalism on a committee, on a panel. We haven't seen that in a long, long time.
Well, and also, I mean, AOC, obviously, she's a real, vector for attention and good and bad, but had a interesting kind of. She gave a sort of monologue afterward on, I guess, her X Twitter on whatever, where she didn't know what to believe. She was leaving it open to believe it, but she really dug into and sunk her teeth into the government corruption and the idea of how unfathomable the amounts of money that are going untraced, that the Department of Defense would never pass an audit, that it does not surprise her in the least that money could be disappearing towards secret access programs like this that they would not know about. And she was citing very specific examples of tens of millions of dollars that were going unaccounted for various things. So she was like, this is the area that she finds most compelling, and it's an arena of corruption that she wants to look into. And so I think it's all about various lawmakers, whatever their level of belief, just applying some crowbars to this weird
Mhm.
military private contractor nexus that seems to be at the sort of
Yeah.
heart, the vault that everyone's trying to break into. And I think up until now, you haven't seen such a kind of aggressive public attempt by lawmakers who I find it very easy to believe have been left in the dark on this,
Mhm.
and that the need to know folks enjoy that status and they enjoy that power and they enjoy that access. So now you just can feel this back and forth and this sort of trying to wedge the door open, and you have guys like Rush who it appears very courageously they're taking the first bullets
Well, a huge
in this.
component of his complaint is not specifically about UFOs. It's about misappropriation of funds, criminal activity to misappropriate funds, criminal activity to subvert congressional oversight. He's whistleblowing on criminal activity within the military to keep to unlawfully redirect funds to secret programs, and and to unlawfully avoid congressional oversight. So there's
This is a hell of a thing for a grifter to want to try to do. I mean, the
yeah.
danger, the potential danger, not even potential, the danger he's putting himself in
Hmm.
is remarkable if you take and just consider who he might be attempting to expose. The
Yeah.
this is pretty like dark, shadowy stuff, and And you can
So
imagine some pretty pissed off people who, whether or not like they take their UFO away, they could be exposed for unlawful activity. They could be on the
yeah,
hook for God knows what.
yeah, and you'd think as a journalist, you would think, oh well, if colleagues who choose to remain anonymous are coming out and speaking ill of him, um, you'd have to wonder. Well, I wonder if any of them are implicated in any of the crimes that he's exposing. Or are they people involved in these programs who are true believers that they should be kept secret and that the public doesn't have a right to know?
Oh yeah, I
And
mean,
but he seems to bring no sort of skepticism to
no,
the people who say what he wants to hear.
he's very clear about his bias. Now in interviews been very clear about his bias, that he doesn't believe in this. He's also very clear. His agenda is very clear in the article itself. The article is a hit job on a decorated war veteran, and he is attempting to shame this person through his battles with PTSD and addiction. Maybe
Mhm.
potentially addiction. At least these episodes were very dark days in this guy's life. The last one was 5 years ago. And somehow we are supposed to correlate these, embarrassing, upsetting episodes in this guy's life and everyone has awful days in their life and no one wants them dragged out for everyone to parade around and
Yeah,
judge. But he wants us to correlate that with and somehow impugn his testimony under oath to Congress about this other issue. And
yeah,
somehow
yeah.
that old-timey shaming is hopefully not going to work in this day and age.
I hope not. And in the notion that, yeah, that the PTSD, um, if because we got to figure if PTSD makes people incapable of discerning reality, truth from fiction, and incapable of telling the truth, or makes them morally suspect to the point where they would perjure themselves in front of Congress, then we should really, we have to look at pretty much everyone who's ever gone into battle with
Oh, yeah.
suspicion. Um,
Yes.
and for myself, from as someone who has uh, lifelong dealt with depression, um, the notion that this makes you suspect is, and the fact that there's been such a struggle over like the last 20 years to bring mental illness like out of the closet, to make it not shameful, you know, um, to make it be something that you have to you can't seek help for, because if you do, you might lose your job.
Right.
Um, all of that, the effort to improve the public's attitude, to improve employers' attitude, to create protections for people who have suffered from mental illness. Um, all of that is damaged by uh, this hit piece, this bit of character assassination. So he's setting out to undermine a story he doesn't like,
Hmm.
and he's willing to do it at the cost of everyone in the world who suffers from mental illness.
Well, sure, because it's so unrelated. I mean, I think what's interesting is that because it's so irrelevant to the actual topic at hand, right? Like it's so
Yeah,
irrelevant. It's only there to embarrass the guy. Like it doesn't there's no proof. It's not like you read and go, "Oh my God, he made up
yeah,
his testimony." No, there's simply zero evidence of that. It is a warning shot to other whistleblowers that we will comb through anything, any any traffic ticket, anything you've
yeah,
ever done will be brought out and you will be humiliated, at the very least embarrassed. Potentially, you will experience more. And so it feels like it's going around this whistleblower law, and it feels like someone definitely needs to do something to
yeah,
discourage this kind of bullshit. And because it if it works, they'll keep doing it, right? I mean, we're talking about this yo-yo, and we're not talking about the Grush testimony or the details of it. So it's a distraction.
mhm,
It is, and so I think hopefully, I mean, it did seem like the people on the committee, Burchett, was they were getting riled up about it and loud about it. So hopefully that's progress. Um, and it's a really interesting story. It's a very, I'm very interested to see where this goes, where Grush's testimony, the story of this guy, and what he must be kind of going through
Yeah,
through this must be extraordinary. It must be extraordinary.
I know. And I was also thinking I was going to throw in the other thing. It's nice that he also managed to throw in a little bit of post-mortem character assassination of Jesse Marcel, uh, the investigator of the
Yeah,
Roswell incident.
yeah. I mean, it was like
Um, he says,
he's going weather balloon. He's gonna go full
yeah,
weather balloon.
yeah, we're Jesse Marcel, a military intelligence officer, and like Grush, an Air Force major at the time, said debris was extraterrestrial in nature, but it later became clear it was actually the remains of a weather balloon.
Oh, I didn't realize they solved the mystery of Roswell. I'm glad we've got
Yeah,
Chris Klippenstein to tell us what really happened at Roswell. That's great. It was a weather balloon,
yeah,
Dave.
and here's the thing: to believe that, much like the way if you want to believe his discrediting of Grush, you have to believe some pretty crazy stuff about Jesse Marcel, who it was in 1959. He was part of the Bikini nuclear bomb tests. He was one of the people who administered at Bikini Atoll the Operation Crossroads, which were the only bombs dropped after the war ended. So he was involved with that. Got a promotion. Was then based at Roswell Air Base, which was the home of the only nuclear weapons in the world, where he was made head of security
Oh,
for
okay.
the
So
for the only
yeah,
nuclear weapons on the planet at the time.
got it.
And so he went out, and when the reports came in that something had crashed, and he returned to the base after going out, and there's footage of him talking about it later in life, where he just flat out says this was extraterrestrial, this was not human, this was not a weather balloon. So he went out, came back, reported that they found material from a crashed disc, and that was released to the news and to the local
Yeah.
radio station, and then the story was then trotted out that this was a weather balloon. So you have to believe the guy who was smart enough and trusted enough and highly ranked enough that he admitted he was involved with dropping nuclear bombs in Bikini Atoll, and then
Someone thought he was reliable, I
yeah.
guess.
Well, General Ramey wrote him a letter of commendation. So after working on the nuclear bomb tests at Bikini Atoll, he gets the job of head of security in Roswell. And there's kind of been a lot of work done over the last 70 years to kind of just depict Roswell as this hick town full of crazy hick people that believe crazy hick things,
Right.
um, which ignores the fact that Roswell was the single most important military installation in the world, with the most advanced weapons on the planet. Um, so, for one thing, it was obviously one of the most heavily surveilled by say Soviet spies at the
Hmm.
time. Um, and so we have to believe that the man in charge of security for this most important military installation in the world could not tell the difference between a crashed flying saucer and a downed weather balloon. Downed weather balloons being something that they would see all the time out there because
Hmm.
they're used in the military for a number. They're used to get information. Oh, just and also just local meteorologists. You're used to them, to study weather patterns. So they are in fact weather balloons. So they come down all the time. So they would have seen them constantly. So this man who is in charge of protecting the most important military installation on the planet couldn't tell the difference between a crashed exotic flying saucer and a prosaic weather balloon. And on top of that, for some reason, and it's all on the records, the response to this weather balloon was hundreds of soldiers and dozens of heavy machinery, trucks, cordoning off the area, getting all the civilians out of there, gathering up this weather balloon, and trucking it off to Wright
It was a
Patterson Air
fucking
Force Base.
scary weather balloon. That
Yeah,
fucking weather balloon was terrifying,
and
and I'm
and the
sure
weird thing is
required.
that normally the normal weather balloon response is a guy in a pickup truck comes out and picks it up.
Yeah.
That's it.
Nothing to see here, Dave.
Yeah.
Nothing to see here. And I guarantee you that Chris Klippenstein did not
Or
research,
Ken. I think
Jesse.
it's Ken. Let me go
Ken,
back.
Chris. I don't know. Ken,
I
Chris.
don't know. I'm going back to the
Um,
top there.
but
We don't
he,
want to slag the wrong Klippenstein. Ken, no,
exactly.
it's Ken.
It's
Ken
true.
Klippenstein. Yeah.
Ken, my
Chris, you're in the
bad, Ken.
clear. Chris, yeah.
Sorry,
Ken, you're the
Chris.
one. Yeah.
I'm certain that the research did not take him to that level of Roswell, which is fascinating, and
Yeah.
why this is such an amazing moment, because we seem to be on the precipice of some truth, and now we're starting to see the forces align against that. So
Yeah.
this is
And
gonna
they,
be an interesting back and forth.
yeah. And remember, there is the legislation being written in response to Grush's revelations to the Congress, the House and the Senate. The laws that are being written are laws that have criminal implications. They have jail time involved if you violate these laws. They are in response to what they've learned from people like David Grush and other whistleblowers who have not gone public yet, is to write laws that if people violate them, if they don't comply with them, with the reporting and the in handing over the materials, in the case of Chuck Schumer's legislation, if you don't comply with these, you're going to go to jail. That's how
Mhm,
serious it is. So,
mhm.
yeah. So, Ken, I don't think these serious people involved in the government and writing laws would leap to these actions um, if they didn't consider the source credible and if they didn't have corroboration that we haven't seen yet, but we know that the corroboration exists. We've been told it by people who have seen it.
Yeah, no, and there's absolutely no question. There's just so much that has been told to them that we are not privy to.
Yeah.
So
Unless, of course, Marco Rubio and Chuck Schumer are conspiring together against the American people.
yeah, it's a magnificent psyop. As yet, no one has explained to me what exactly they would be doing that for. So, but
Yeah.
some have floated this idea, and I find that kind of absurd on its face.
Yeah.
I think
May-
they
Maybe
are
the immense,
trying to.
I'd say maybe the immense investigatory skills of Ken Klippenstein could be called to bear on that story.
Here, as long as it doesn't give pause to the decision makers, I have a feeling it's going to backfire. I have a feeling it's going to be seen for what it is, and which is a kind of lazy, ham-fisted effort to smear this guy and dissuade others from coming forward. And hopefully they can push back to some extent and threaten or do whatever to drag out people that would violate the whistleblower legislation, because this is precisely why it's in place, to try to protect people from kind of reprisals like this. So
Mhm.
it's hard in a anonymous, leaky space to find out who's done this, and just illustrates the dangers to reputation. And again, on the fringe, dangers, who knows, to their physical well-being. I find it really creepy, and I think Congress should make sure they kind of keep an eye on David Grush and
Mhm.
anyone that comes forward with this stuff, because lives, there's a trail of ruined lives on this, in this subject matter.
Yeah.
Um, but there you go. That's our rant. I think
Yep.
it was a good one. I
I
think
hope
we
so.
I feel like it was. I feel better. My simmer is down. Um, and how are you? You got any good plans for this weekend? What are you doing?
No plans. I never
No
have
plans?
plans. No,
No.
I'm a shut in. Yeah.
Your daughter has a new single out, doesn't she?
She
Alina
does.
Foley.
She has a beautiful song called Death March that you can get on.
It's r-
You should check that out. Go, yeah, on Apple Music. It's on Spotify. It's probably on other things that I don't know about.
it's
But yeah,
good.
Death March by
She's
Alina
great. She's
Foley.
talented.
I know. I'm
That
very
Alina
proud of her.
Foley, she is very talented.
I'm very proud of her, and
Yeah.
she's not ashamed of her father for caring about UFOs.
No, my Amelia's coming around. Luke and
Yeah.
Amelia
Oh,
are coming
good.
around.
Oh, good.
I'm getting them good and scared. I'm lathering them up. They're nice and anxious about it, so that's good. I've done my job.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. Well, listen, I look forward to our next conversation, and This was a good one as always. Great to see you.
Nice to see you. Yep, and hopefully I'll be back in LA soon so we can do this in person again.
I know, I want that. And also, before we go, again, don't forget, follow us on Instagram at
Yeah.
really_podcast_official, TikTok at really podcast if you want to, again, see these faces. Subscribe on YouTube, on the Stampede podcast channel, or anywhere you get your podcast fix. Like and subscribe. And we're very, very grateful for those who have been listening so far. And it's
Mhm.
super exciting. Can't wait to
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah, and leave a review if you wish.
Yeah.
Um,
Tell us what you
uh,
think.
yeah, if it's gonna be negative, make it right up front so I don't read the whole thing. Like, don't amble into being negative, and because I'm
Right.
very
That's the
sensitive.
worst.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you
Just
start on
write
a
it
big paragraph, hoping for the
just
best. And
just start out with, "This is shit," and then explain
Mm,
why.
yeah.
Yeah.
But we
Uh,
encourage nice things. And,
yeah.
but we want to hear whatever you have to say. So thank you for listening. And I'll see you next week, Dave.
See you next week. Love you,
All right,
Tom.
buddy. Love you, pal. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.